Well, we're glad that you're joining in on our Bible study of the Feasts of the Lord. My name is Gary Zimmerman. I work with the Torah and Beyond Ministries. And the feast we're talking about this lesson is the Feast of Trumpets. And it comes out of Leviticus chapter 23, verse 23 through 25. It's a very, very short passage on a feast. It's been a mystery probably since Moses wrote it down, because there's basically all you're supposed to do on this day is shout and blow a trumpet and remember. There's going to be a remembrance. And the feast is normally it's called the Feast of Trumpets, and they get it out of this word here, teruah. Teruah also means to shout for joy, for mastery, for overcoming. And we took this picture out of one of our Torah scrolls that came from Iraq. It was a very old Torah, and I believe it was probably at least 1800s, perhaps into the 1700s. A lot of wear on the Torah. The iron gall ink was having a little bit of degradation, and there was some corrections made. Very beautiful old Torah. Here is again our chart for the continuity of the feasts and the chronology. It follows a normal way that people would do things, like number one, number two. They're not mixed up, and they're in sync with the New Covenant. The very first feast is the Feast of Passover, and this is the crucifixion of the Messiah, Jesus Christ. And the second feast is the Feast of the Sheaf of First Fruits, and that is the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The third feast, you see how they're moving like this. The first one, and then just a few days later, the resurrection. And now we're going to go 50 days to the Feast of Shavuot. And then that is at the time when the Holy Spirit came down to the born-again believers, the ones that had accepted Jesus as their Messiah, and He indwelled them. And so these first three feasts, the first one is our redemption. We're redeemed. He was our kinsman redeemer that bought us back from what all we lost in the Garden of Eden, and we got it all back now. And the second feast, the resurrection, is the justification, the omer that was lifted, that actually Jesus, when He emptied paradise, He led captivity captive, and He brought all the spirits that were in Abraham's bosom up with Him to heaven, to His Father. But He took an omer's amount of people that got their bodies, their glorified bodies, and they went to heaven with Him. And so that is the justification. When the Father saw His Son standing there and all these others, He said, as in Hebrew it would be dainu, that's enough. I am satisfied. I like what you have done. And then the next feast is what we're going to talk about tonight. It's in this lesson. It's the Feast of Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets, and it's been a mystery since day one. And actually, if it hadn't been for the New Covenant, I don't think anybody would ever have the slightest idea of what this feast was about. The Jewish people, they take out of the Babylonian Talmud, they took a lot out of Babylon with them, and they just says, well, it's the beginning. We don't know what to say about this. It's perhaps the beginning of the world and the birth of Adam and such. Well, in the New Covenant, we get some very good details of this mystery feast. And then in just a short while, I'm going to teach the Feast of Yom Kippurim, the Day of Atonement, which is the tribulation period. And then the last feast is one that I wish would happen just right away. And that would be, we'd be going to heaven and the Lord Jesus Christ to be on earth. In fact, Jesus says, pray. When you pray, say, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. And it's something that we're supposed to want and something that we're supposed to be praying for. And it's the Feast of Sukkot, the Tabernacles. The Tabernacles, we just finished that feast. And the tabernacles are made out of palm branches and myrtle branches and willows of the brook. and they're just covered. There's these little huts that you build out in the woods or out in the desert. You gather up the wood that you can get, and the Jews were supposed to stay in it for 7 days. And when the Messiah comes, it will be the Feast of Tabernacles, but it's going to be temporary. As temporary as all the leaves and the wood that they put in it. It'll last only 1,000 years, and it'll be like the earth was in the time of Adam and Eve. The lion will lay down with the ox, and the serpent won't bite you, and a young person would die at 100 years old, and only if they. The Bible says the sinner that will be accursed at 100 years old. There's going to have to be getting saved in the millennium, and I believe, according to the verse in Isaiah, you're going to get about 100 years. And I don't know. It's you can read it any way you want, but that's what I've come to the conclusion. And then after this 1,000-year period, God is going to roll up like all these scrolls. I don't know how many scrolls God has, but He created the heavens and the earth. And at the end of the Feast of Tabernacles, Feast of Sukkot, He's going to roll up all the heavens, the cosmos, like a scroll and set it aside. And He's going to create a new heaven and a new earth. So that's the feast. You see the order they came in? It's logical. You can't put one over here and three over there. It just works like this. So I'm going to say this. When I'm talking to people about the rapture and they say, well, it's probably a mid-trib, or it's over here and it's over there, maybe there isn't even one. Well, this is the key for me. This is the Bible verse out of the book of Leviticus 23. It's talking about this feast where there is a shouting of joy, of mastery, of overcoming, and also of battle. And there's a trumpet blown, and in the book of Thessalonians it says that with the voice of the archangel and the trump of God, there will be some people leaving planet Earth, and looking forward to that one too. Okay, here is the wheel calendar, the yearly calendar of the Jewish people. I put the English on the inside of it, just to show you what in the Gregorian calendar, January is the first month for us, and I think in the Chinese calendar, does anybody know what month it is? How about in South Korea? What calendar do they go by? Okay. Well, okay, so here's the Gregorian right here on January, and over here God says this is the first month of the year, the month of Nisan. And it's the Passover, and then on swinging all around. And we have all these slides on our website if you'd like to see them in high resolution. Well, I didn't throw that slide out. Isn't that amazing? Sometimes I just don't get everything done. Okay. All right. Well, we did see the wheel calendar that was not off center. The second one was off center. Okay. Now this feast, let me just read it to you. It is so brief. It takes a whole verse to say this, and the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, that's verse 23. Then you go to verse 24, speak unto the children of Israel, and saying, in the 7th month, in the first day of the month, shall you have a Shabbat, a memorial, a blowing of trumpets, a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein, but you shall make an offering by fire unto the Lord. The end. Okay. Well, okay, you didn't give us any details here. And so it's been a mystery. And because this feast and the next 3 feasts we're going to have are in the future, we can't look, as we look back at the Passover, we say, wasn't that amazing? Everything that it talks about in the Old Testament, the New Testament, it fits just perfectly on the Passover. That's really good, the way it all fit together. And then we look at the Feast of First Fruits, and we learn all about the Omer and all these other things that say, wow, this really happened, and it really fits. It's solid. There's no question. And then we move to the next feast, was the Feast of Shavuot, Feast of Weeks. The weeks plus 1 day is 50, which is Pentecost. And we say, well, look at this Old Testament feast, and when Jesus fulfilled this, it fits together And there's no question about it. It actually happened just exactly like it was supposed to. And now we're looking forward. And I would presume that because the first three happened exactly like it was supposed to, when they're fulfilled, I'm going to have to say the ones in the future are going to be fulfilled in the same way. But there is one problem I've had in a Bible study with my son Daniel. He's working on the Feast of the Lord also. And what happened, the first month you have this, and then a couple of months later you have this, and then 50 days later you have this, and then all of a sudden you get a 2,000-year gap between these feasts. So they were done on the right day, the first three right days, same year. And now this feast that we're still in the Feast of Shavuot. And Shavuot is a harvest feast, and we're harvesting the world for souls of mankind, that they would accept Jesus Christ as their Messiah, their Savior, for forgiveness of sin, so they could go to heaven. I think God wants more and more people in heaven. I'm sure He does, because His Son died for people. He wants them there. He's not trying to push them away. So you get 2,000 years, and then on the right day, on the seventh month, first day of the month, there's going to be the Feast of Teruah, or Feast of Trumpets, but we don't know what year. Okay, and because he skipped this 2,000 years, you don't know what the next feast. We're always talking about is the rapture, and then bang, we're going to have the tribulation. Well, if he continues this 1,000-year thing, this 2,000 years, he might extend maybe a year or two. Who knows what it's going to be? So anyway, I'm saying all that to say this. I've been saved now for probably about 65 years. I have studied my Bible all these 65 years, but vigorously for the last 52 years. And I have some opinions, and I'm satisfied with my opinions. And I'm going to give you my opinion of these feasts. I know there's a difference in thought, but this is what I've got. So we have this lady standing on top of some tall building with some binoculars looking out, and she's looking at, I don't know what she's looking at, but I have her looking over here at this Bible verse, okay? And Paul says, we know in part, and we prophesy in part, but when that which is perfect is come, then that which is in part shall be done away. For now we see as through a glass darkly, but then face to face. We'll understand it there. But we do know some things. We're not just totally left in the dark. Oh, we have no idea about the rapture. Maybe it's this or that. Who knows? Nobody even knows anything. Some people even say, why bother with prophecy? Well, most of the Bible is actually prophecy. And it's really good for you to study prophecy, okay? So here it is. What do we actually know about the Feast of Trumpets? Well, we know something. Does the Bible say anything? All right, let's see what this says. Leviticus 23, verse 23 through 25. Okay, there is one word in this passage. Some of the other words, like sacrifice, we know what a sacrifice is. We know what a Shabbat is. We know what a don't work day is, and such. But there is one word in here, and it is the Hebrew word teruah. And here I've written it here, just in case you know Hebrew. And that is kind of the key word of what this feast actually is. Okay, what is it? Well, it is a shout. I've already said that. Actually, the next slide, I'm going to have this on there. Here it is. There's your word teruah. And it comes from the Hebrew root word ruah. And I think we kind of use this word. The word teruah, again, I say it means to shout with mastery, with joy, with overcoming. And it also means, again, I say, that it could be like a warning of something. There's something going to happen, and beware of this thing. In the English language, we don't do it anymore, but in the old days when I was young, you'd see somebody and they'd say, hurrah, hurrah, We don't say, does anybody ever hear anybody say hurrah lately? We just don't say that word anymore. But it comes from this Hebrew word. And when this feast does actually take place, the shadow is in Leviticus 23, verse 23. It's a very dim shadow that you just can't really make out what is this shadow of. Well, when it is fulfilled, this is going to happen. Then you'll know. And so there's some other things that we know about this feast. We know that there's several different kinds of trumpets. Actually, it does say in Leviticus 23, verse 23, it doesn't say shofar. Okay, there's not. This is a shofar. Okay, and it doesn't say shofar, and it doesn't say trumpet. The word's not even there, and it is presumed because of the shouting. It has the idea of making a loud noise, and so generally people, almost everybody I know, my Jewish friends, my Messianic friends, my Christian friends, they all believe, well, yeah, you get a pretty loud noise out of this, and everybody knows that Gideon blew it, and he blew the trumpets and the shofar, and we know that when they came across the Jordan River and circled Jericho, that there was a lot of ram's horns, and that they blew the horns, and then they shouted, and the walls fell down. So we get an idea of what that word truah means. And so I showed you several different types of. This is a kudu horn. Mostly the Yemenite Jews like to use this, and it is fancy, and it does make a much nicer sound than the very short one like this one here. Okay. But actually, this one right here is what you'd find in Israel. You wouldn't find one of these. Now you would today, but back in the old days, back in Moses' time, and Jericho's time, Joshua's time. And here's another one. It's a ram's horn. We know what they looked like during the time of Christ when he was walking the earth, because there are some mosaics. This mosaic is in a synagogue. And they found this synagogue, and they found the floor of it, and it's just a beautiful mosaic. I was there. I got to see it. Very interesting. And they have this is a ram's horn right here. Okay, and here's your candelabra that they would symbolic. Well, this is a symbol of what they had in the temple, the tabernacle, and this is supposedly, I would think that it's a palm branch. And then this mosaic is actually just really beautiful. I got to see that one too, and it was a huge mosaic. You could walk around this thing, and it's a synagogue in Tiberias. And this is a ram's horn. We didn't find any kudu horns on these things, but it is interesting. Here is for the Jewish folks that are watching this lesson. This is your lulav, your palm branch, and it's closed. Even back in the time of Jesus' day, they closed it, and they said when the Messiah comes, we're going to open that branch. And well, they actually did open it when Jesus came in riding that donkey that day. It's called Palm Sunday, and they brought all these palm branches and spread them in the way. And well, here they're not seeing the Messiah firsthand, so they wrap it up. So maybe they used a ram's horn, maybe, but probably not, because it does mention trumpet in the fulfillment of this feast, and here it is. We know what kind of trumpets they had, because when they sacked Jerusalem in 70 A.D., Titus he got a bunch of the things that they stole everything they could, and he was really mad. Okay, if you've ever seen the history of how they had to take Jerusalem, the Jews were really, really better fighters than I thought. I was amazed at the attacks. They'd come back, the Jews would drive them out, and they'd come. They were really whipping the Roman legions. And they got madder and madder as it came on, and it just became we'll just kill each other. That's all we're going to do. And then when Titus and the Roman legions came in, the Roman legions just went berserk, And to the point that Titus couldn't even calm them down. He just said, "Go." You didn't say nothing. Just whatever you're doing, do it. And they really did it. They stole everything and tore everything down they could. And in the temple, they pulled out two silver trumpets and a candelabra and some other things. And then the question is always asked, well, where are the things, that Moses had? The Ark of the Covenant. And did they really take the candelabra that was made, like 3,500 years ago? God told them how to make it. Is this it? Well, if you use a little bit of reasoning, Jerusalem's been sacked 2 times by very powerful forces. The first time, Nebuchadnezzar. And in those days, you couldn't send the fighter planes over and the tanks coming over the hill and just surprise them. No, it's no big surprise. They're moving their big war machines, 3 or 4 months later, they're building them, and here they come. Okay, they made about half a mile today. They're going to be here in 17 days. Okay, so what are we going to do? Maybe they're going to win, so maybe we ought to hide the good stuff. And this is what Moshe Bronstein told us. We were on a wonderful archaeological dig in Jerusalem, and he said the Jews weren't stupid, and he was a Jew. He was a Jewish general and also an archaeologist. He actually got almost killed in the 7-Day War. I'm digressing for a minute, okay. But his tank got stuck as he's coming up on the Temple Mount. And he was a tank commander, and his tank got stuck. They didn't think, maybe the gate's not wide enough for my tank. Okay. Anyway, he said that wouldn't it seem reasonable if someone says, I'm going to come over to your house, I'll be at your house in about 3 weeks, and I'm going to burn it down. Well, or I'll talk about my wife over here. That someone's going to come to our house, and they're going to burn it down in about 3 weeks. The first thing that my wife's going to do, she's going to get the pictures of the grandkids. Grandkids first, the kids second, and then our other stuff. And she's not going to leave it there to get burned. And so, in my opinion, and I think I have a really good opinion, these aren't the trumpets that Moses had made, but they're identical. And here is the candelabra. And so, what are they going to blow, and who's going to blow it when this shadow? Remember, all of our feasts are all just shadows. Some of them are kind of clear, but if you do this for eternity, it would just say, what is the purpose of doing this for eternity? That's just a shadow of the big deal that's casting that shadow, and the big deal was not the lamb that everybody's cutting the throat and put the blood on the door. The big deal was God himself came down here and says, I'm going to offer my blood, and I'm not going to set you free just physically. I'm going to set you free spiritually and physically. So anyway, here somebody's going to blow a horn, and we'll tell you who it is in just a little bit. So let's talk about the horns first. Okay, so what is the purpose of blowing the trumpets? This is not a trumpet, completely different word. Numbers chapter 10 gives 3 biblical explanations for the use of trumpets, and these 3 biblical explanations fit like a glove, just the same way the Passover fit, and that the sheaf of first fruits fit. It just fit. My son likes to work puzzles, and he's telling me someone was putting together a puzzle as a young person, and they were carving the puzzle piece a little bit to get it to fit in there. You don't have to do that with this. And so this, it fits. 3 things. And actually, there are going to be 3 things that happen when we call it the rapture. Oh, yeah, that word's not in there. No, it's not. No, it's not really there. But there's a snatching away. Oh, well, how do you pronounce that in Greek? Okay. Well, in my King James Bible, it says they were translated. Okay, well, I can translate Russian from Hebrew. That's not what it means. It means they're taken away. Elijah was translated. You know, the King James Bible, I wish I'd use a better word like beam me up, Scotty, or something, where you get a real idea of what's going to happen. But, okay, there's going to be a snatching away, and then the next feast that comes is going to be a worldwide disaster that God says that it's worse than anything has ever been or could ever be. And he says, if I don't cut this short, the 7-year period, if I don't cut it short, there will no flesh survive. So he's going to cut it short. And so there's a warning. And the third thing it says in the book of Numbers, chapter 10, is when the trumpet is blown, I am going to remember my people. And that is exactly what it says here in Leviticus chapter 23. Speak unto the children of Israel, saying that in the 7th month they shall have a Shabbat, a memorial. I studied that word this morning, and I forgot the Hebrew to it, but basically that word means to remember. Something is going to be remembered, and who's going to remember it? Okay, so let's turn to Numbers chapter 10, and let me read you a few verses. The Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Make the 2 trumpets of silver, of a whole piece shall you make them, that you may use them for calling the assembly. Okay, that fits. Okay, and for the journeying of the camps. It's not talking about the Babylonians journeying with them. It's the journeying of the camps of God. And when they shall blow with them, all the assembly shall assemble themselves to thee at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. So somebody is going to move. His people are going to move when the trumpet's blown. And if they blow but with one trumpet, then the princes the heads shall gather them such and such. And then verse 5, and when you blow an alarm, then the camps that lay on the east part shall do such and such. When you blow an alarm the 2nd time, they do such and such. So there is a gathering of assembly, and there's a blowing of an alarm. And then, let me see, verse 9. And if you go to war in your land against the enemy that oppresses you, then you shall blow an alarm with the trumpet, and you shall be remembered before the Lord your God, and you shall be saved from your enemies. Now, this is exactly what's going to happen. My son and I, we study these lessons a lot, because these lessons that we're given here, these 6 feasts, and you could say 7, putting in the Feast of Unleavened Bread, but it's the same thing as the Passover. It is the entire New Testament. So when Daniel and I are studying this, we're studying the entire New Testament, comparing it to the Old Testament. It's quite fascinating. So calling the assembly. One of these days, we're moving. You know, this is a really strange thing that people, I love sci-fi. I've loved sci-fi since I was a kid. It's interesting, and it's fascinating. But when you talk about leaving planet Earth, you're getting kind of spaced out. Or I don't know how the kids say it today. But yeah, we're actually leaving planet Earth. And one of these days. And when the trumpet is blown, we will leave. God's people will be called to move immediately. Numbers chapter 10, verse 2. And when you blow the alarm the 2nd time, Numbers 10, verse 6, a shout or a blast, now that's the word teruah, it's a shout or blast of a trumpet. At that time, it'll be the time of Jacob's trouble. Now there's several words for the book of the Revelation, several words. You got tribulation, you got the time of Jacob's trouble, you have the apocalypse, and probably some other ones, but they're all the same thing. And so when the trumpet is blown, there's going to be a war, and this time it's going to be on earth at first, and then it's going to be heaven kicking. They're going to remove Satan and all of his angels out of heaven. You know, I guess most Christians probably think the devil's down there in hell wearing a red suit with a pork and tail and a little pitchfork, and he's over there making you sure you're miserable in hell. In my opinion, he's never been there. And when we get to the next feast, or the last feast, I'm going to show you the first time I believe Satan ever went to the pit. And he's not happy, and those that see him aren't happy, because he becomes just as weak as they are. And he's not going to go down there as the kingpin, not according to the book out of the book of Isaiah, the verse out of the book of Isaiah, chapter 14. That is a fascinating passage of Scripture. I can't wait to get to teach that. So the second time, then the third thing, the children of Israel are going to. They're not, in general, the majority of them aren't accepting Jesus as the Messiah. God has given me a job to do that. I preach and teach to the Jewish people. I've been doing this for 50 years, and my forefathers were Jewish, and it's a natural thing for me to do. And but they're not going to go up in the rapture. Those Jews that are believers are. Any person that's born again, even if you don't believe it, and even if you don't want to go, you can hang on to the bedpost if you want to, but you're going up, okay? And I always tell people, I'm so sick of this world, on my way up, I'm going to throw my keys on the table and say, here, you can have all this mess. I'm leaving. But the third reason for blowing the trumpets is that God is going to remember something, not like God forgets, but he's going to bring a subject in front of him that he's going to work with, and it's his people. And how he's going to do it, he's going to start the 70th week of Daniel. We've only had 69 weeks. The book of Daniel says there's 70. Something stopped, and it's going to start again. And the way it's going to start, he shall actually, verse 27 of Daniel chapter 9. Speaking of the Antichrist, he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, 1/7, the 70th week. The reason you call it's 7 years, because each year, there's 7 days in a week, and each day it gets 1 year. That's why the tribulation's 7 years long. And in the midst of the week, in the midst of the 7, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even to the consummation, and that determined shall be poured out upon the desolate. So he's starting the clock again. Clock's on hold. We're still in the feast of Shavuot, in the harvest. Okay, so without the New Testament, the explanation of Leviticus 23, verse 23, would still be a mystery. You might as well say this is the year that this is the time that the world God made the world, and Adam's birthday. We're going to celebrate it again. He's probably almost 6,000 years since his first birthday. Actually, he was created, wasn't he? Okay, but it's been a mystery. Now we have some answers. And Paul is writing here in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 51 through 50, behold, I show you a mystery. It is a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead in Christ shall rise incorruptible, and we shall be changed. That is exactly what Thessalonians says, only he gives more detail. And he's saying, hey guys, I got it. I got the mystery. You want to know? Here, I'll tell you a secret here. This is going to happen. I want to tell you, if you have never spent a good bit of time studying 1 Corinthians chapter 15, the last 30 verses in chapter 15, it is the most amazing thing. It's almost like we get on some kind of spaceship and all these weird things are happening, and it's amazing what God is doing with the earth and what his plan is, and he's given us some ideas what it is. And here it is in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, chapter 13, verses 13. And let me read this to you. There's not many verses. I'll just read a few of them. And you, when I'm reading this, take in mind for Leviticus 23, verse 23, okay? For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, teruah, with a voice of the archangel. I guess it's the archangel that's going to shout, because it does say it's his voice. And his name is Michael. We know who the archangel is. And with the trump of God, there's your trumpet. It doesn't say with the shofar of God. Maybe the Greeks didn't have a word for that. And the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so shall we ever be with the Lord. Therefore comfort one another with these words. And so this feast is going to happen. Today, when a person dies, like I've had to bury most of my family. I'm the preacher in the family, and I buried my granddad that led me to the Lord, and then I buried. Let's see who died next. I buried my dad. Boy, that was hard. I preached his funeral. I recommend you don't preach my funeral. It takes something out of you. And then I buried my mother, and I buried my sister, and one of Dan and Amy's children, their child, Jonathan, he died, and I says, I don't have nothing left. You know, it is a joyous thing. Jesus said, if you loved me, you'd be glad that I'm going. I'm going to my Father. But he did cry at the funeral. Okay? Maybe he cried for the other people, but he literally wept. And some things do hurt. So, today, when a person who has accepted the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus the Messiah, his sins are forgiven, and when he dies, his spirit will go to be with the Lord, because his spirit has been born again and is sinless. His body is going to return to dust because it's sinful. That's the last feast we taught. And this is the way it is. This is what will happen to you if you die before the Lord decides to pick us up. I remember looking at my dad in the coffin, and he wasn't there. His body was there, but Dad was gone. I led him to the Lord. I led my mom and dad, my whole family, to the Lord. And well, there was his body, but he's up in heaven. He was an alcoholic. He had PTSD to the max. Okay, he was on the Saratoga World War II, and his general quarters station was up on the stack, and it was too much for Dad. I think 7 kamikazes. I need to get off this subject. I'm not going to be able to talk about it. But when he got saved, he absolutely turned completely to a new man. So we go up, our body's buried, and then when the Lord comes back, the body comes out. Comes out of the grave. You know, here's a good one for you. There's all kinds of questions about, okay, how about this? How about if you fall over, you're a Christian and you're in a boat and you fall off the boat and a shark eats you, and there are a bunch of pieces, a whole bunch of sharks eat you. How's it going to find you? Okay. Or how about if you're buried out here in the cemetery, and you know the old cemeteries where they had wood coffins, and the worms got you, and the worms went this way and this way and this way. How's it going to find you? Well, God knows all the cosmos. There's so many stars, there's no number for it. But God has called every one of them by name. How do you get a name? Okay, I say, you're number 1, 2, 3. Maybe that's how he did it. He gives them a number. Or maybe he says, well, this one's beautiful, and this is not quite as beautiful as I don't know. But we're going to be put back together again. Us are going to be put back together again. The dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. Now, this thing about getting the King James word is translated, okay? Getting translated doesn't happen very often. It's happened twice in 6,000 years. Okay? This is kind of like a little picture of of someone's imagination, and why not? Okay, one of them got on a chariot, and the horses were afire, and the chariot was afire. It doesn't mean that an angel poured gasoline on the horses and the chariot and lit it on fire. No, these horses were fire, and the chariot was fire. And Elijah got on this thing that was a fire, and it looked like a chariot, and it went up. I don't know if we're going to get chariots, but these guys are going up without one. Okay. 6,000 years ago, we have Enoch. And Enoch walked with God after he begot Methuselah for 300 years and begot sons and daughters. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. And by faith, Enoch was, there's your word, there it is. Okay, let's call it raptured or translated. Okay. Enoch was translated. You know what I'm going to have to do next time I teach this lesson? I'm going to have to get the exact meaning. Go down the dictionary, the Greek and the Hebrew dictionary, and say, translated means this, and this. Because the word translated. If you call it rapture, people know what it means. I don't think anybody knows what translated means. And Enoch was translated that he should not see death, for he was not found, because God had translated him. For before his translation, he had this testimony that he pleased God. Maybe, Star Trek, they call it Beam Me Up. Maybe when King James was having the Jews write the Old Testament, he said, I really love that word translated. Okay, use translated. Don't use Beam Me Up. That's not going to come around for a couple of hundred years. Maybe it meant something to them. And then 3,000 years ago, another guy did it. 2 times it's happened. And it came to pass when the Lord would take Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind. Well, he did a little bit more than a whirlwind. He got him a chariot. Behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder. There was Enoch and Elijah. And Elijah was the big guy, and Enoch was his next guy. Okay, it's going to be the prophet. And they both were parted asunder, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. So that's in the book of Kings. So the reason we have these scrolls is not just because it's fun to have scrolls. We use these scrolls a lot. And I photograph these scrolls, and I put information around this verse here. And I put this on Facebook and other places in my lessons, and you can see it. And the Jewish people, when they see this, they like it a whole lot more than they like this, because this, when they get under conviction, it's happened to me many times over the last 50 years. When I would get one of my Jewish friends would say, okay, I kind of believe this, and I believe this. And then I get to, Jesus is the Son of God. They say, okay. Hey, we wrote this thing. You mistranslated it. Okay. They can't say that about this. It works for me. Okay, this is going to happen. Watch. Sooner or later. Let's see. When will it happen? Okay, maybe I have to push the button. There we go. Maybe God will have to blow the horn. And one of these days, I wonder, this cemetery you've got out back, probably is just, I guess they're all going to go. Probably, I hope so. Now and then we have down days that aren't good and down years that aren't good. And that feast I taught the last time with the Feast of Shavuot, it's what happens to you when you're born again. Sometimes you just wonder, what in the world? And here, look at this kitty cat. Okay. I'm not going to say cats don't go to heaven or dogs don't either. Okay, I'm not going to get in there in that thing. But let's just pretend this is a person. and he or she's having a really rough time. Well, one of these days, it's going to be a whole lot better. Read 1 Corinthians chapter 15. It is a must. If you're having a downtime, it's a must that you read 1 Corinthians 15, 35 through 58. It's good. So in the resurrection of the dead, so also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown in corruption. It is raised in incorruption. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. Look, we're on the winning team here. And God has us in His hand, and we're not getting out. I gave an illustration on the last feast lesson that if you're on a dangerous road, if one of my kids, when they were young, I wouldn't do it now, they'd have to carry me now. But if we got on a highway, I wouldn't just grab them by the hand, I'd grab them like this. And so you're not going to get hit by a car. I'm going to make sure we're not going to get hit by a car. And I think we're in God's hands and we're secure. Doesn't mean you're not going to die or have a bad time. Paul got hit by a rock almost every time he went to town and preached. But his name's on the New Jerusalem. Okay. Well, that's the end of this feast, and we're going to start very shortly on the feast of Yom Kippur. And thank you for watching, and thank you for listening.